We thought it was really a good idea to have you on today because you have a piece that you put up on Al Jazeera, I think it was yesterday, um, giving us context. I think this is so important. It's not just, I think a lot of us are upset that George Zimmerman is walking away from killing a teenager with a bag of Skittles, and I think it's beyond obvious that you only could run this type of defense, frankly, with an African American kid in Trayvon's position. So it's grotesque and disturbing in and of itself. But let's get to the broader issues, the issues that kind of circle what happened in Florida. And those issues are gun laws pushed by ALEC and the NRA. And you did a great job kind of describing what was behind this in that piece. So why don't you kind of just outline the roots of this that you were writing about for Al Jazeera?
Sure, and thank you for the compliment. Actually, this piece, believe it or not, I wrote this in March of 2012.
Oh,
It just when the stories first really broke big on what had happened to Trayvon Martin in this case, and it just happens to still be very relevant today with what we're dealing with. Essentially, what happened was, and this is what happens with what ALEC, which is what the American Legislative Exchange Council, and this is a secretive, corporate-funded right-wing group. Their biggest funders are the oil companies, Walmart, the NRA, pharmaceutical companies, all the bad guys you would expect. And they pretend that they're represented. They have members who are legislators. It's actually a lot very very similar. ALEC is to the NRA because they pretend they're sort of a grassroots organization because they have members who are legislators around the country. But legislators pay these small dues, which amount to something like 1 or 2% of the money ALEC brings in. Almost all of it is from large corporate donations, and that's of course the same thing with the NRA, who of course acts like they represent these couple million members, most of whom don't agree with them on most things and aren't really that active. Instead of the people who really fund them, which are the gun manufacturers. So it's its own astroturf kind of operation.
right.
And ALEC and the NRA got together because ALEC is they're basically like locusts that go from state to state. Like they move on. They can't just destroy one place. They go from one to the other. So, for example, if you've seen all these anti-abortion bills being passed that look unbelievably magically similar in places like Ohio and Wisconsin and Texas and all over the country, North Carolina, wherever there are right-wing legislatures and governors in control. When you see these things, it isn't just an action. It isn't like one legislature sees another one in another state and says, hey, that looks like a good idea. This is a coordinated effort, these guys. And so they had a committee that they had to do with crime and justice, or some name that's kind of laughable.
Right.
They have these different committees. And Walmart, of course, was a key member. And Walmart is the biggest arms retailer in the country. So selling more guns is always good for Walmart. But, of course, the NRA was on it. And they hatched this plan to start this thing in Florida, really, in 2005, because there's a major lobbyist down there, this little troll named Marion Hammer, who was a former president or executive vice president, which is the same thing as the person who runs the NRA in the past. And she's based in Florida, and she's the lobbyist there, and that's why a lot of the worst legislation on guns has started off in Florida. And she was the one who with Jeb Bush and a Republican legislature, including some Democrats, sadly, but sponsored by State Senator Dennis Baxley. And if you want any more, and really the key here is that this whole culture is based around racism.
Right.
What ALEC does, what the NRA does, you really just don't need to look any further than the fact that the guy who was a co-sponsor is a member of this guy Dennis Baxley, a state senator, is a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Right. Big guy who wanted them to be able to put the memories of the Great Lost Cause in their license plates in Florida. Lest you think that this stand your ground thing has anything to do with African Americans ever being able to stand their ground. It
Right,
literally is another one. It's another code in a long number of codes for how whites can keep their power against those encroaching black masses. So that's who it was who was behind it. ALEC, as you may know, is behind, or you may not know, so let's say it, is behind policies that discriminate against and disproportionately hurt African Americans across the country. All the assaults in different states on voting rights, those have all been discussed, agreed upon, and passed, pushed by ALEC. Bills I talk about in here, such as tort reform, which disproportionately hurts poor and minorities, again pushed by ALEC, and others. And then to close the loop, there's the NRA, who has board members such as Ted Nugent, who just the other day said he'd like to, he'd like to machine gun South Central from a helicopter.
Right.
I wonder what he's talking about. He's referred to the dark continent of Africa. He called Trayvon Martin, what did he call him, a punk, gangster.
A gangster who chose the path of violence, chose the route of violence. Yep.
That's right. And I mean, Ted Nugent's a scumbag racist to his core. But there's others. There's the part of the Alaska contingent, which includes Don Young, who of course referred to those who worked on his farm as wetbacks. You have Wayne Anthony Ross, also up in Alaska, who is so radical and right-wing that when Sarah Palin was governor and wanted to name him as Attorney General, the Republican legislature up there rejected him.
Wow.
He published an editorial. What was he saying? Nice things about an art student who had used a Ku Klux Klan figure as part of their art. I mean, this stuff just goes on and on and on.
So really, what ALEC could be called the Coalition for American Feudalism, essentially.
Yeah, I think that would be about right.
Now,
I mean, again, inevitably, this is all about white privilege. It's about wealthy white people against everyone else, as it always is with these guys, which includes religious fundamentalists who have all, the top dogs, they've all cashed in and traded in anything they used to actually believe. But in the end, disproportionately, what they push hurts minorities. And from their membership and from everything else, you can see that. So, everything that happened with Trayvon Martin follows that logic. It makes sense that that some guy literally saw an African-American kid, 17 years old, walk by him, somebody who is older and bigger. I don't know if he's taller, but, he was a skinny kid, Trayvon Martin. He's carrying a gun. He's the guy that's called police something like 46 times before to complain about African Americans, who look suspicious to him. He's the one who, when he calls the police, they tell him not to pursue this kid, stay in your car. He's the one who refers to him, as an effing punk and how they always get away. I wonder what he meant by that. Or these assholes always get away, I believe is what he said.
He was foreshadowing himself.
Yes,
I'm sorry?
yes.
He was foreshadowing himself, in fact. But anyways,
That's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he certainly was.
Yeah.
And then he chose, and didn't listen to them, and chose to pursue this kid, and shoot him and kill him. And also, let's be clear here that in these guys on the right are sort of saying, "Oh, Trayvon Martin smoked pot and did stuff like that." George Zimmerman had to get a restraining order against him by his fiancée for being violent, assaulted police officers in the past, and showed violent behavior there. And his own cousin came out and said he'd molested her for 10 years and also claimed that he violently hated African Americans. So, and that was reported by Jonathan Capehart of the Washington Post, not some conspiracy. So it's sort of, what more do you need?
They also did not do a toxicology report on George Zimmerman.
That's right, because the police didn't think it was necessary, because it was only a black kid that was dead. He must have been telling the truth.
Well, right, and that's really, so I think that is really precisely the point, because you're drawing this connection with ALEC, with the NRA, and this is a full frontal integrated agenda. And maybe some people are genuinely white supremacists, racist, like Ted Nugent. Maybe some people don't really care. They just see that, less black people or low income people vote, we have a better chance of winning elections, and you take care of the gun lobby because that's who contributes, campaign dollars. They're just complete amoral hacks. But I think what's at root here, and what in some ways is so disturbing from a kind of communications and public narrative agenda, is that we've seen that this notion that there is this kind of traditional America and all that means, the racism, the sexism, all the rest that's embedded in that, is kind of winning the day in a certain sense, and being perpetuated by these highly well-funded and very integrated lobbies. So in that sense, like the whole premise of this being that Trayvon is not, he's not an American teenager. He's this other terrifying figure that can be stalked and killed.
That's
And
right.
everything that comes around that. And then on top of that, the violence that it kind of gives a green light to in general, because you quoted somebody in your piece, I think a legislator who voted against the original Stand Your Ground legislation in Florida,
It was Dan
or a judge,
Gelber,
or is he a judge?
Progressive legislator.
Right, and basically he said, look, he basically said about Stand Your Ground, quote, when someone looks at your wife the wrong way or spills coffee on you, should you walk away, or are you supposed to stand your ground and fight them to the death? Like, what does this even mean here? And I guess I'm drawing this connection. I'm attempting to draw this connection between how we otherize people, how we give kind of a certain privilege and citizenship to, essentially wealthy white people, wealthy white males, and then this kind of delusional, cavalier, vigilante, like, oh man, if I was in that theater, I would have taken care of everybody, kind of death wish sort of fantasy that the NRA pushes. Is that the kind of cultural corollary I'm trying to draw here to the policy, if that makes sense?
Well, yeah, and that's completely correct. I mean, in the end, it doesn't mean that there's never going to be a case of stand your ground, and there already have been, where somebody white shoots somebody white, or somebody black shoots somebody black, or whatever it is. But at the core here is that when somebody feels strange to you, when you feel fear, that's all that has to be proven here, is that you fear for your life. Well, there are people, probably much like George Zimmerman, that fear for their life just when they look at somebody who's African American, because they're so racist to their core. And in many other ways, that that laws in the past gave license to whites to do whatever they pretty much wanted to blacks, and they weren't as explicit. It wasn't explicit that, hey, separate, but, it was called separate but equal. So you guys theoretically should have equal facilities to us. Of course, didn't work out that way. African-American schools were much worse, and any of the public facilities that they were able to enjoy were terrible. I mean, this is just a sort of extension of, you fear that person, they're different. This justifies your fear and gives you a get-out-of-jail-free card. And if you don't think that ties into the complete strategy behind lunatic sociopath Wayne LaPierre's efforts to sell more guns based upon the roving gangs in your neighborhood, when things like Katrina hit and the police can't protect you, and all the garbage he spews, the gang members and the whatever, we all know who he's talking about. Just like we knew what Mitt Romney was talking about when he called Obama the welfare president. These things are codes, and they're not really hard to discern. They're pretty easy. Lee Atwater in the past gave a whole exposition on how the Republicans, Lee Atwater being the former right-wing political consultant who helped Bush in the 80s and whatever, who died of brain cancer, but while he's alive sort of admitted how they had to start. They couldn't just use the N-word anymore. They needed code. And that's what this is about, too. When Wayne LaPierre gets up there and says that, he's talking to old white and middle-aged white guys. Protect yourself against the blacks and the Hispanics and the others out there who would come and rape your women and steal your property, because that's all that all of them do. He's playing directly into that.
This story reminds me of another story I heard. Not this story. What you were saying basically reminds me of another story I heard about this guy Raul Rodriguez, who basically went to his neighbor's house complaining about they were being too loud at a party, and basically he brought a gun and he called the police while he was on the phone yelling at his neighbors. The neighbors came outside, and he specifically used certain terminology that he had studied up on, and used that with the police on the phone to make it sound like he was scared for his life, when in fact his neighbors, it came out, were doing nothing, and he shot them. There was no imminent threat, but he used certain terminology that he studied up on in the law, the same type of laws that are pushed by ALEC and the NRA, and he was able to basically almost use these laws to get away with murder. I mean, in this case, it did turn out that because he had told another individual that, if you're ever in trouble and you need to use your gun, just use these terminologies, just use these words, these terms, and you could get away with it, because they'll think you were worried for your life and you were just acting in self-defense. And when that came out, that's when his case fell apart. But I mean, it's just amazing to me that, it's not only just, they're pushing for these these laws to be passed for people to to use their guns, but there's specific there's ways to use these laws that are basically getting around they're using it to get around things. Like they're looking for a fight and learning these laws to be able to get away with doing this.
Well, basically, this is what this law serves to do is undermine all other rule of law. What it serves to do is actually make lynching legal again. That's really what it serves to do. It serves to literally go back to the days of where you'd form the mob and go and tear the black or the African Americans out of their homes and just hang them. I mean, I hate to be so brutal, but that's and plain about it. But that's what this does. I mean, it's a way of reasserting power that you used to be able to go and do that kind of thing when a guy was looking at your wife the wrong way. Now you can't. But here we're gonna give you a free pass to do it again. I mean, if anybody doesn't think race is so inextricably linked, is such a key part of this, they're missing the forest for the trees. That's what this is about. And really that's what the whole gun culture is about.
Has there been
quite frankly, it's all a revolt against modernism and multi-ethnic, multiracial society, and sort of saying that you can hole up and protect yourself with your gun against everything else that threatens you, which is pretty much everything these days. And that's way beyond, and that's what we're talking about here. And part of it obviously is a business plan by the gun manufacturers, because gun ownership has gone so far down since in the 70s, 50% of American households own guns. We're now under a third. And younger generations, every generation you go down further in polling will show you that fewer and fewer people own guns. So they need to scare the lunatics into buying a bigger and bigger arsenal. That's how they keep gun sales going. It's the one guy who's got 20 guns. It's not the guns.
It's the Travis Bickle
and who
market.
Is that one guy?
It's the Travis
right?
Bickle
How do you
market.
appeal to him, and why should we not all be afraid of the person that feels the need to do that?
Right.